Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a huge question that pops up all the time in personal finance. Can real estate really be your shortcut to early retirement? Or is it just a super risky gamble that looks a little too good on the internet? We're going to dig into the strategies, the debates, and some of the real dangers you might not see coming.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the dream itself, why everyone's chasing early retirement. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the real estate playbook. After that, we'll look at the tough realities and why this path is so debated. Then comes a big one, a hidden danger zone that affects every single investor. We'll even explore a potential insurance policy against that risk. And finally, we'll pull it all together to help you think about your own financial future.
So, first things first, the early retirement dream. Before we get into all the how-tos, let's just set the stage. What is this all about, and what's the deep-down motivation that's driving so many people to chase this idea of financial freedom?
You know, this whole explainer really starts with a simple question, one posted on Reddit by a user in her mid-40s. She felt like she was behind on her retirement savings and was wondering, hey, is real estate the way I can catch up and get to the finish line faster? And that question, well, it's one that millions of people are asking themselves right now. Okay, so before we go any further, let's make sure we're on the same page. F.I.R.E. It stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And look, this is not your parents' retirement plan. This is a full-on movement. We're talking about aggressively, almost obsessively, saving and investing, not 10 or 20% of your income, but 50 to 75%. The goal? To walk away from the 9-to-5 grind in your 30s or 40s. It takes a wild amount of discipline.
Which brings us right to the real estate playbook. For the folks who are all in on property as their F.I.R.E. vehicle, what are they actually doing? What are the moves they're making to try and hit those super aggressive goals? Let's break it down.
And let's be clear, the potential upside here is, well, it's huge. Just take a look at this real-world example from a Reddit user named Lilo Wildstar. She's 42 years old and is pulling in $100,000 a year in gross rental income. Now, of course, that's before mortgages and expenses, but it's still a powerful illustration of what a well-built portfolio can generate.
So what's the secret sauce? Well, the whole strategy really boils down to this 4-step loop. First, you use leverage. That's the big one. You get mortgages to control assets that are worth way more than your initial investment. Second, you hunt for cash flow. Properties where the rent covers every single expense and still leaves you with a profit each month. Third, you build equity. Your tenants are paying down your loan, and hopefully the property value is going up. And finally, you scale. You take the cash flow and the equity you've built and pour it into the next property, and then the next one.
And it's not just one path. Investors have this whole toolbox of different tactics. You've got house hacking, which is super popular for beginners. Basically, you live in one part of your property and run out the rest, wiping out your own housing costs. Then there's turnkey investing, buying properties that are already fixed up and run it out, often in cheaper cities. For the more ambitious, there's the BRRRR method, which is a whole system for rapid scaling. And behind it all, you've got these constant financial decisions, like the classic debate: do you go for a 15-year mortgage to build equity like crazy, or a 30-year to keep your monthly payments low and stay flexible?
But, and this is a huge but, this playbook is nowhere near as simple as it sounds on paper. For every success story you see online, there's a brutal reality check waiting in the wings. This is not an easy path, and the debate around it is frankly pretty intense.
Now, what's so powerful about this quote isn't just what it says, but who said it. This isn't from some skeptic. This is from a guy who actually did it. He achieved financial independence using real estate. And he's telling you flat out, yeah, it's powerful, but it's incredibly hard work and it is not low risk. He says it's basically his full-time job now, which just completely shatters that myth of easy passive income.
And that really gets to the core of the whole debate. It comes down to this fundamental trade-off. With real estate, you're in the driver's seat. You have high control, you have access to incredible leverage, but it comes with high effort and a ton of complexity. It's a job. On the other side, you've got your classic index fund investing. It's totally passive, it's simple, it's diversified right out of the box, but you give up all that control and leverage. There's no right answer here, just a completely different set of risks and rewards.
You know, no matter which path you pick, there's this one monster that trips almost everyone up: lifestyle inflation. It's that constant temptation to get a bigger house or a fancier car every time your income goes up. One early retiree, Eric Hughes, calls resisting this a superpower. He says the whole game is about growing the gap, that space between what you earn and what you spend, and just relentlessly investing the difference.
Okay, let's just zoom out for a minute, because beyond this whole stocks versus real estate debate, there's this hidden danger,
a universal risk that affects every single investor as they get close to retirement. This is the part of the journey where your timing can make or break you. So let me just ask you a question. Think about it for a second. When does your investment performance really matter the most? Is it when you're just starting out in your 20s, throwing a few bucks into an account? Or is it right when you're about to cross that finish line into retirement? The answer is pretty surprising, and it gets to the absolute heart of retirement risk.
So check this out. According to some fascinating research by Wade Powell, the returns you get early in your career, they barely move the needle. They only explain about 6% of your final wealth. But look at the last 15 years of your career, when your portfolio is at its biggest. The returns you get then explain a massive 65% of your final nest egg. A bad market right before you retire can be absolutely devastating.
But here is where it gets really crazy. The moment you retire and start taking money out, the whole thing completely flips on its head. For a 30-year retirement, the returns you get in the first 10 years explain a staggering 77% of whether your portfolio survives or not. The last 20 years barely even matter. What this means is a nasty bear market right after you retire can be catastrophic.
So this scary phenomenon actually has a name. It's called sequence of returns risk. It sounds technical, but the idea is actually super simple. It's not just your average return over 30 years that matters. It's the order, the sequence in which you get those returns. Just having bad luck and hitting a rough patch right around your retirement date can completely derail an otherwise perfect plan. So if that's the big, scary risk lurking out there, what can you do about it? Well, this leads us to a pretty complex and honestly often misunderstood financial tool that some experts say is designed specifically to fight this danger: annuities. And the best way to think about them is not as an investment, but as a kind of insurance policy.
So how do these things even work? Well, Wade Powell calls them actuarial bonds. Just like a regular bond, they're designed to give you a reliable stream of income. But they have this one unique, kind of weird feature called mortality credits. Basically, it's a pool of money from people who don't live as long as expected, and that money gets redistributed to help fund the payments for people who live longer than expected. And that allows an annuity to do something a bond could never do: provide a guaranteed income stream for your entire life, no matter how long that is.
So how much of your money should you actually put in one? Well, if you're looking for a simple answer, you're not going to find one. A massive review of more than 70 academic studies found recommendations all over the place. Some said the optimal amount could be as high as 40 to 80% of your retirement assets. Others found different numbers. The truth is, there's no magic number. It really depends on you, your tolerance for risk, and a whole bunch of other factors.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. We've talked about the dream, the real estate playbook, the fierce debate, and this universal risk of bad timing. So, what's the bottom line? Let's try to pull all this together and figure out what it all means for you.
I think we can boil this whole deep dive down to 4 really critical points. First, yes, real estate can be a rocket ship for building wealth, but please do not mistake it for passive income. It is an active job that demands skill and hard work. Second, diversification is your best friend. You don't want to bet your entire future on just a handful of properties in one city. Third, this is the big one. Every investment strategy is incredibly vulnerable to sequence of returns risk right around that retirement date. Doesn't matter if you're in stocks or real estate. And that leads to number 4. Your financial plan has to be smarter than just chasing an average return. It needs to account for the very real risk of when those returns actually show up. You know, at the end of the day, there's no single perfect roadmap to financial independence. It just doesn't exist. What you have instead is a compass. It's a set of tools, a set of trade-offs, and an understanding of the risks. The real question, after seeing the whole landscape, the opportunities, and the dangers is, which direction are you going to point yours?